today. And and today we got some very important topics to cover. And I got my superstar panel, attorney Milton and attorney Vanita Banks. But before we get started, we'll make an announcement, and then I'll go over to history. Now, caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, sir. So right now, what is your name, sir?
My name is Michael Hill, and I'm with the Pike Township Fire Department, and I'm a part of the recruiting committee.
Well, tell us about that. Now, what is, we know it's important to have diversity within the fire department. So what program you have in place now to recruit more blacks to the department?
Things we're doing right now is we've made changes, process as far as the testing, and also just being more transparent with the process. So we're going to be giving out a lot more information after you run an application for our department, and they will continue emails just to help engage you with test taking and other different skills that you need on the process.
And what phone numbers is that on your website? Is there a number they can call for more information?
So for the website, so visit www.piketownship.teampress.com, and that will take you to the website, and you will go to career section and fill out the application. And once you fill out an application, then you will be put on an email list, and you will continue to get information sent out to you via HR. Pretty good. Her name is Chris Harrison. He will a whole bunch of information and keep you updated and keep you engaged in this process. Also has Q&A sessions after you fill out the application, May 10th through 12th, and those will be through Zoom to allow you to ask questions about the career and the profession, because just like a lot of people before I joined, I had no idea I've entailed, but I was interested, and this will give you a better idea by hopping on one of these Zoom calls, May 10 through 12, to ask any questions as far as benefits, pay, all those things above.
In order to be eligible to apply, what is the eligibility requirement? Like you have to be over age 21, and what are the requirements?
That's a great question. The requirements are you have to be 21 by the hire date. Can't be 36 at the time of the hire. Official hire date, first quarter of 23, January, February, March. So those when we're looking to hire the next class to start, so cannot be 36 by that time. So between, I would say, 21 and 35 high school diploma.
The other thing, though, do you have a program, a person have a felony conviction, do you have a process for them to get rid of their conviction so they'll be otherwise eligible?
So once you go on our website, there will be a direct link that you can click on that helps you start your expungement process or know how to do it and see what qualifies and allows you to apply. Be part of the Pike Township Fire Department.
And is there a phone number they can call if somebody wants to talk to you about this in the future?
Is there a phone number? You can email IRS and she is our HR lady, and she's good at her job, and give you any information, ask any questions.
Well, thank you very much. And then if you send a flyer to us, we'll put it on our posting also. So we think it's important to have diversity within the fire department. So we're going to support that effort. So thank you very much for calling in. And we'll start running a notice of that because I think that we need to promote diversity within the fire department. So thank you very much.
Yeah, so one last thing. The application process, enrollment is open now and closes May 31st. You have to put in an application for May 31st. Start the process, and then you get hit with more information as the process.
Okay, we'll send a flyer, but we'll post that. That's a short time period, so we only got like 2.5 weeks, sounds like. So we'll be on it. So we want to make sure we have diversity. Thank you very much. Yeah, go ahead. Milton has a question. Milton, go ahead.
Yeah, what is the starting salary, if I may ask, if that's not a secret? I guess it's a secret.
No, it's not a secret. Did we lose them? Hey, producer, did we lose the caller? It's
yes,
on their website.
he signed off.
Hmm?
Milton, it's on our website. I think it's right around 55,000 a year. And by the third year, they're up to about 75,000. The fire department pays, it's competitive wages, and they have great benefits. But today, we're going to talk about this. The hottest news stories of the day, of course, deal with the abortion issue. But before I get started, the reason why this subject is so important, the history of abortion really parallels the history of slavery. Let me explain why. In 1857, we had the Dred Scott decision that basically said that Black folks did not have rights as citizens in this country and that they were property. And that was a bad decision. It was a 7-2 decision of the United States Supreme Court. Now, the reason that was important, abortion in America was legal in 1800, and the reason that abortion became illegal was because of slavery. In the 1800s, the white slave owners wanted their women to have as many children as they could because they were property. So this whole issue of abortion dealt with the issue of property, because slave owners say that is my property, and I want them to have as many babies as possible because I get more wealthy because these slaves belong to me. So abortion in America didn't become illegal until some of the white churches got on board until 1910. So, and it became illegal from 1910 in certain states up until 1973. But the problem is that abortion historical basis was some really bad Supreme Court decision that dealt with race. And so keep that in mind. So having said that, counselors, we had that bum this week. We had the leak brief written by Associate Justice Alito. We'll start off with Attorney Banks. What do you think about that leaked brief? Hello?
Good
Okay.
morning, and thank you, Attorney Lee. A leaked brief in my career is unprecedented. Have you ever heard of a draft brief of the Supreme Court being leaked? I've heard people state that they have not ever heard of that in, quote, modern times. I've never heard of a draft.
Did we lose the sound?
You're on mute,
Yeah, we
Attorney
lost the
Banks.
sound.
You're on mute, Attorney Banks.
Did you hear anything that I said?
Nope.
Yeah, you can mute, but no, we missed the last 30 seconds. Go ahead.
So you heard the first part about leaked briefs?
Yes, we did.
That's unprecedented. Yes. And I think that I'll just start in our discussion with Justice Sotomayor's quote from the oral arguments in the case, the Dobbs case, the Mississippi case. Her quote was that she worried whether the court would survive the stench if the court upheld Mississippi's controversial 15-week abortion ban. She stated that the court would be perceived as highly politicized if it undermined the 1973 Roe decision. will this institution survive the stench that this will create in the public perception that the Constitution and its reading are just political acts? So I'll start there in terms of positing her comments. Roe versus Wade, the 1973 decision, which we've discussed in detail on earlier shows, is the law of the land, a 49-year precedent that society has relied on to overturn Roe. I've heard people say would take us back to the 1950s. Attorney Lee and Grimes, I submit it will take us back to the 1700s. The Roe case, just briefly, held that inherent in the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment is a fundamental right to privacy that protects a woman's choice whether to have an abortion. However, that right is balanced against the government's interest in protecting women's health and human life. It was a 7-2 decision, and it used this concept of viability and a balancing test relative to the stages of pregnancy. And as you know, stated in the first trimester, which is approximately 24 weeks, the woman, the decision regarding reproductive health and whether to have an abortion is a decision to be made by the woman and her doctor. In the second trimester, the court held there could be some regulation, again, balancing the health of the woman and the unborn child. And in the third trimester, the court held that the state could well regulate abortion and could in fact prohibit it except to protect the life of the woman. And so we also have a concept in law called stare decisis, which in Latin means, which is a Latin term, which means let the decision stand. And so for 49 years, society has relied on that precedent, and generally courts are bound by and abide by prior decisions. Let me stop there.
Attorney Grimes?
You know, I remember back when I was in high school over 50 years ago. I was born in 1945. And young ladies here and there would get pregnant. And the question was asked, what's going to happen? And it was usually an unwanted child coming into this world. But sometime the talk was she needs to get a clothes hanger and go to DC, because they do that in DC. And I lived about 5 miles from Washington, DC. And we lost a few young ladies from my community through the bleeding and infection that accompany illegal abortions with clothes hangers. Mexico wasn't close by like it is in California. So I can see us going back to that time where poor people, young ladies who come from poor families and lack of education and all of the things that accompany people that live in poverty, they're not going to benefit from the modern day medicine that's available to other people. So I think it is going back, Ms. Banks, and what year, I don't know, but it's definitely going backwards to make abortion illegal. Because for many reasons, I think we've argued the reason why it should be legal. It's a woman's right, it's her body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought stare decisis had really set in on that issue because we've been talking about it less and less over the last 50 years, but I guess nothing is ever settled. Some people think we should be back to slavery. So it would be a bad move to go back and remove the right for an abortion, I think.
Well, my concern is probably based in the biblical language in Proverbs. When evildoers do things and good people do nothing, then you're going to have bad outcome and a net result. And this whole issue of abortion in America, it parallels the history of slavery. And that's what I'm concerned about when you look at this illogical ruling, this reason of this Justice Alito. It's troublesome to me because these same analysis could be used to make slavery legal again. I mean, this off-the-wall rhetoric that he put in the opinion. Like, for example, when we had the Dred Scott decision back in 1857, that was a 7-2 decision that basically said that Black folks weren't covered by the U.S. Constitution, although they were in certain states able to vote and things like that before that time period. And so now we have these penumbra of rights that generated, we had the issue such as gay marriages, but then remember folks, the 11 versus Virginia case where they said that Black and white interracial marriages were illegal up until that decision. So the point I'm making is that as citizens, this is not merely a radical departure from the abortion issue. It could be the beginning of the erosion of rights that we fought and died for the last century. And I think that's what we're dealing with. I mean, this court so far off base on this issue until it's a scary thought process. And by the way, if you think that this could not go worse, just look at the history of the court. Who would ever thought that the Dred Scott case, and at the time when the justice of the U.S. Supreme Court made that decision, they thought that decision will cause a common effect in America. That's why we had the Civil War. The Dred Scott decision was the principal legal decision that led to the Civil War, or the war between the states. Well, I thought it was a war between good and evil. But anyway, Attorney Banks, you can go ahead and continue. Sorry.
This leaked opinion holds that the Constitution does not establish a, quote, right of privacy, and that if a right is not explicit in the Constitution, then it's not protected, and that you should instead look to, quote, history and tradition. What is that? Attorney Grimes and Lee, have you ever heard that rationale? History and tradition? Well, historically and traditionally, for over 49 years, Roe has been the law of the land. And Attorney Lee, I agree with you wholeheartedly that the 14th Amendment due process clause has been the underpinnings of other US Supreme Court rulings on, let's go back to Griswold, which held that the state could not prohibit couples from using contraceptives, that the state could not interfere in what is happening in individuals' bedrooms. The same-sex marriage opinion is grounded in the right of privacy inherent in the 14th Amendment due process clause. You mentioned the Loving case, the right to interracial marriage. And so although there was it a footnote in this leaked opinion draft that stated that we're only focused on abortion and not these other rights, I don't buy it. This case will open the door to, as you said, Attorney Lee, taking us back to a time when we had no rights.
It takes us back to when a human being was property.
Right.
A woman, property. I think I've mentioned before the Whitney plantation outside of New Orleans was a specialized plantation. It was a breeding plantation. Like down the road, they breed dogs, and further down, they breed horses. At the Whitney plantation, they breed slaves, and that's what it was known for. They'd have.
I can't hear it. So how do I get the sound back?
Are your headphones near you?
Wait a second. I need to go back on.
We can hear you on the Zoom. Can you hear us now?
I need to turn the sound back on. How did I turn the sound on? See right there?
What is it? What does the word say at the top of that sound thing?
We can hear you.
Yeah, what does the word say about the sound bar?
Just unmute the phone and mute the Zoom.
Yes, but they can hear what I say, but I can't hear what they're saying.
And mute yourself.
We're okay, Nick?
Oh, can you hear us?
I heard you then.
Okay. I don't hear Mr. Lee.
Vanita, you there?
I'm sorry, I had my mute on, but I hear you and Sonia.
Okay. I'm sorry, I was having some temporary technical difficulty with my sound. And I didn't hear the last question. Hello, producer. We'll take a short commercial break.
Attorney Grimes,
Yes, I'm here.
you were stating that we.
Oh, I was saying that it's a property right. It goes back to slavery, where can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, where at the Whitney plantation, they specialized rather than in dogs and horses, they specialized in breeding slaves, and they had all women allegedly on that plantation, 30 to 40, 50 women at a time. And they were raving about this one woman had 12 slaves in a 15-year period of time. Every time she had one, she'd get pregnant again. And that was their boast. That's what that plantation was for, to breed like an animal, slaves. So that was the enslaver's right to own that property. and to breed that property. It feels like telling a woman what she has to do with her body now is another property right issue, where the powers to be like to own and control people and other things.
Well, I'm concerned because if equal protection doesn't apply to women, then where are we as Black citizens of the United States? If women doesn't have equal rights to make decisions about what goes on in their body, I think that we could see a rapid erosion of rights that we fought so hard for the last half century. I think this is a dangerous precedent when we could make a court decision that basically say that you don't have equal rights and protection of the Constitution. And part of that decision was disturbing to me because they were saying they were wrongly decided, but it had to do with these privacy rights and the equal protection of the law. If we don't have equal protection that applies to everyone, then how do we have a democracy anymore? Is this the beginning of the eradication or erosion of the democratic principle? Where are we headed with these type of decisions? Where does it end?
I agree, Attorney Lee, and picking up on Attorney Grimes' points that this decision would disproportionately impact women of color, African-American women, and women that don't have the means. And what do I mean by that? If I'm affluent, I can go to California, I can go to Illinois, right? But if not, then I am unable to avail myself of that choice. And Justice Alito stated that this is an issue for the states. This will create inconsistency. There are 26 states currently that are poised to enact restrictive laws like Texas, which, as you know, is a 6-week ban, and Mississippi, and 13 have trigger statutes in the event that Roe is overruled. In Illinois, anticipating this, we have a statute protecting a woman's right to choose, but I don't think that's the case in Indiana, Attorney Lee. Is that right?
I'm not familiar with that, but Attorney Banks, here's what was critical, I thought, in that Dred Scott decision. In this decision, this draft opinion by Justice Alito had some of the same language that was scary to me. In the Dred Scott case, here's what the important thing why this all ties together. The Chief Justice at that time said his ruling was supported by an extended survey of America's state and local laws from the time the Constitution drafted in 1787 that purported to show that a perpetual and impassable barrier was intended to be erected between the white race and the one in which they had reduced to slavery. Because the court ruled that Scott was not an American citizen, he was also not a citizen of any state, and accordingly could never establish the diversity of citizenship. So in other words, slavery was not entitled to equal protection of law. And in this opinion, women are relegated to not having equal protection of this 14th Amendment also. And so if we're not careful, what is it then? Are we going to have segregated schools? Do we got the Brown versus Board of Education next? What is the next thing that's going to go off the track with this out of control Supreme Court?
Attorney Lee, you just answered Mike Chrisley's question in the chat. And his question was, could this decision send other decisions back to the states, such as Brown versus Board of Education? And this decision could do exactly that.
Yeah. Now,
Well,
now
let's
the
make
only-
America great again. How else do you expect to do that if we don't change these laws, girl? Huh?
Well, here's the problem. If the only saving grace about this was a draft opinion, and oftentimes there's going to be edits, and this 99-page opinion ultimately going to be altered, particularly in light of the public pressure. And I watched the Social Justice Thomas comment. He said that the Supreme Court is not going to be bullied, and which was the ultimate hypocrisy that I've ever heard, in view of the fact that his wife was involved with the conspiracy to overthrow the federal government. This whole thing is way out of control now. When they think somehow the Supreme Court will be bullied into making a decision, when in fact the decision they made is, in my mind, is so contrary to American values and what a democracy is all about. So we're going to have a democracy whereby 5 persons determine the course of the whole country in a negative manner. Is that really democracy? Ultimately, this emanated from the picks of Donald Trump when he abrogated the appointment process, quickly nominated people to the Supreme Court, who, by the way, these same judges in their confirmation process, they've shown over and over again of them talking about not overruling Roe versus Wade. I mean, over and over again. They showed video clips of them. And now, by the way, they were under oath at the time. These justices were under oath when they said that Roe is the law of the land. Now, they're making radical departure if that decision holds. Is that justice?
When is that ruling supposed to come out? You know?
Late June, early July. It may well be the last decision announced by the Supreme Court. That's my speculation based on prior history. And yes, it is a draft that was prepared in February, and Alito was elected or selected to write the opinion. It's the hardest right opinion, it's the hardest right draft that I'm sure they're going to be debating vociferously over the next several weeks. It is true that many times those drafts are changed, that people change their votes, but we'll see. But my question is, colleagues, who do you think may have leaked that draft? And what do you think the consequences should be if that individual or individuals are discovered or identified?
Well, the problem is that there's no criminal code that talks about leaking of judicial opinion. And so all the courts have the same type, a similar type process, whether you're in Indiana or Illinois or otherwise. When they're circulating those draft opinions, they're all confidential. And even, it's sort of like when you're preparing for trial, the things that you're doing is deemed a train of work product, so it can't be used for any other purpose. So if it inadvertently get out, it can't be used, and you're required to destroy it immediately if you receive the other person's work product. So this idea of the work product has been around for the last 2 centuries in our legal system. So it's no different than what we deal with every day as attorneys. And so I don't think that it could possibly rise to criminal misconduct. On the other hand, it could result in an ethical breach based upon, there's several ethical rules that, the rule of candor and things like that, in terms of dealing with courts. And so if it was a lawyer who leaked that, I suspect that they'd probably lose their law license. And that's my suspicion.
I'm thinking that if the individual or individuals that leaked that draft they must have, in order for it not to be, quote, traceable, they must have, printed a hard copy and provided the hard copy, because as a cybersecurity data protection attorney, privacy attorney, if that document was transmitted or forwarded online, the court, through their IT department, should be able to identify the IP address from which that document originated.
Yeah, also because the PDF version will have that tracking information on it, date and time, stuff like that. I thought about that also. Then it was interested, and one of the justices left his briefcase with documents at a local bar. So the plot thickens, I was hoping and praying that the leak came by Kavanaugh when he left his briefcase at this bar one night, the sports bar there in D.C.
He's still drinking beer at sport bars? Nate?
Is that a joke,
Yes.
Attorney Lee?
No, it was in the newspaper. Kavanaugh inadvertently left his briefcase in a bar, and somehow he hasn't gotten it back. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder, he said there's a bunch of stuff in there, but I wonder whether or not that opinion was in his briefcase that he left in the bar.
An attorney that I have an argument with that opposing Monday, he said, I said, well, where's this document that we're going to be discussing? I haven't seen it. He said, okay, I'll send you a copy of it, Milton. And he said, while we're talking, and he sent me this document from the DA. Now, he's a county counsel representing the sheriff officer that we're going to end up suing for arresting a Black attorney for representing his client on pure bull and having $1,300,000 bail bond put on this attorney. And so I said, where's the document? I need the document. You haven't sent me. He said, okay, I sent it. And he sent it while we were talking. And he sent me the whole screen of correspondence between he and the DA, and talking about the judge. And he goes all the way back a year and a half. He said, oh, Milton, I made a mistake and I punched the wrong button. You're going to get our screen communication for the last year or something. I said, I won't read it. That's okay. But accidents happen. People make mistakes all the time. And I'm not going to read it. I just have to throw it in the trash, Vanita, when I take it out of my computer.
That's exactly right. And you are acting in accordance with the ethical requirements of an attorney. That's exactly right. If you receive something that you should not receive, then we're ethically bound not to read it, as Attorney Grimes stated. But I didn't hear this news last week, and I'm just looking at the article, the New Yorker article, that Justice Kavanaugh left his briefcase at a bar last week. Do we know if that was before or after the leak?
Too many beers will do that, Anita.
It was before they had come out with the bombshell article. So that's why I was thinking, did he have that opinion in his briefcase? It'd be interesting to find out. I was hoping that was the source of the leak. That, therefore, it give the court more integrity, at least, because it would appear, the way they're characterizing it, as though there's some type of spy at the Supreme Court, which I can't imagine that there would be, but, it's just such a bizarre set of facts.
And this is why voting matters. This is why judges matter.
Yes. I thought about this long and hard. And I've been watching on television the political pundits. They've been talking about what can be done and the politicians, or some was openly advocating the extension of the First Amendment right, that is, to march and peacefully protest. And there's been a lot of discussions about this. I think that at the end of the day, that the only way that we can make effective change is through legislation. And ultimately, we need to get passage of federal laws that protect these rules. See, if they had a federal statute that laws are adopted by Congress and signed by the president, then it's up to the Supreme Court to interpret the law. But if the law is simple and it says a woman has a right to abortion and they set up the parameters, then that would be the law of the land. And but the problem we have is that we have this issue with the Senate. That is that we have a artificial creation that dated back to the civil rights era in the 60s, where in order to oppose legislation, the Senate has this rule that requires a supermajority to pass legislation, the so-called filibuster. And the irony of this filibuster rule is troublesome to me. Let me explain why. The filibuster has been used to prevent a lot of important legislation, but I was troubled by the fact that the Democrats did not use that filibuster to put Amy Barrett on the Supreme Court, and that troubled me. And I know they made an exception for judicial, but I see the way in which they've held up the appointment of Ketanji Jackson. You got to remember, this last Amy Barrett got on the Supreme Court, took Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat after we already knew that Trump had lost the election. So we got a person on the United States Supreme Court during an election year at a time period in which we knew we were going to have a new president. So they got her on the Supreme Court, and I was troubled by that. And so we have had our leaders, particularly on the Democrat side, I just think that they need to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of what they need to do to protect our rights. We got the issue with voting rights, where we've seen an erosion of those rights. So where does it stop? You know, this Roe decision reversal, if it comes to fruition, may just be the beginning to the end of what we known as a normal democracy in this country. And I fear each day now when I see these legislations and by state, they're getting crazier and crazier. People are now dealing with more conspiracy theories than I've ever seen before. And so the point is that I think that what Attorney Banks said is more relevant than ever. We must vote in the next couple of elections like our life depends on it. We got to get a higher voter turnout, and state by state, county by county, district by district. We have to start working on that every day. And I'll be proud if we got 95% of our people from the African American community to vote in the next election, all over the country. That would be my dream.
At this juncture, it seems that, and I've been hearing this week, that President Biden is still resisting eliminating the filibuster. And at this juncture, I believe that tremendous pressure should be exerted on him, if not voting rights, and if not a woman's control over her own body. I can't think of anything more important that would justify the elimination of the filibuster.
Do I sense some disappointment in our president, Ms. Banks?
On this issue, absolutely. On this issue, absolutely. You can believe that if the Republican Party was in the same situation, and we have a glaring example, not of eliminating the filibuster, but with the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation,
Mhm.
if they were in this situation, as the Democrats are, the filibuster would be eliminated. And if they gain power in this next election, guess what? They're going to pass all the laws that they desire, continuing to erode basic fundamental rights and potentially the death knell of our democracy.
What happened, Mr. Lee?
Well, what's interesting is that one of the things that may be affected when you look at the erosion of these rights is the Loving versus Virginia case. Because if you take the logic that Judge Alito put in the decision, the purported draft decision, that same right of privacy and equal protection could eliminate the marriage of Associate Justice Thomas. So he's married to a white female. And so, I was thinking about that. Maybe that would be one area in which he stopped being the right-wing conservative, because that same logic could actually make his own marriage illegal.
And Mike Chisley has raised that exact point. And we recall, Mike, that Senator Braun, he later, receded back. He suggested overturning the Loving decision.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he raised the question that you addressed, Attorney Lee, that could mean that Judge Thomas's marriage would be legal in Indiana and other states. And I'm not aware of any laws on the books that regulate men's reproductive health. Why don't we have any laws banning vasectomies, for example?
Now you're getting a little too deep, young lady. You stay in your place.
Well, that's the problem, and that's the issue we're dealing with. Going back to Dred Scott in the slavery type cases, the Equal Protection Amendment, the equal protection we enjoy for the Constitution and the 14th Amendment, apparently is not equal anymore. If you could take, women are more than 50% of the population of the United States. And so now we can, by judicial fiat, that a woman no longer have the same equal rights as men enjoy every day. And that's the problem with this type of decision. It's such a radical departure from what democracy is all about. And I think at each American, we have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, what have I done today to make sure I've done everything possible to make sure that we protect and preserve this democracy? I think that this is the greatest country in the whole world, but we have to go out there every day to make sure that we're protecting it. It's very fragile. We saw on January 6th of 2021 that we try to get a certain group of people to try to overthrow the democracy. Now we're seeing this judicial fiat going a radical departure from norm. What do we do? Well, the only thing we can do as Americans is go out and vote. Vote like we never, like our lives depended on it, because that's certainly what we need to do. And now, in certain states, like where Attorney Grimes lives, that's been one of the states, I think, whereby you've had the rights of abortion for a significant period of time. And I saw that your governor, they were saying that you guys are going to be a safe harbor. And I saw them doing the same thing in Illinois, Attorney Banks. Not so much here in Indiana. That means that everybody in our state,
Fortune 500 corporations step up to address the issue this week as well, agreeing to pay for their employees travel in order to go to states like Illinois and California.
Uh,
Well,
well, closing comment, first with Attorney Grime, what do you think we should do, and what's the future of this legislation?
Nate, I think that Vanita pointed out, or you just said, that 60% of the population is female in this country, but it seems as though the majority of white females are going along with the right-wing political decisions. And I don't know if it's out of ignorance or that they see a economical benefit in the end of doing so, and they want to remain in that seat of comfort, as opposed to looking at how most minorities look at this, which is rights, and the importance of rights and the preservation of our rights. So do we solicit their votes, Vanita? Or we just keep fighting this war by ourselves? Is there a chance that we can get them to bring their voting power to the left? So we just have to keep voting, Nate. We have to keep voting, and we have to keep getting more voters on our side of what we think is right. That makes sense?
Attorney Banks?
I would just say in closing, just to emphasize again, that to your point, Attorney Lee, that we have to vote in every election like our lives depended on it, because they do. Our lives depend on these determinations that are being made. And I'm also just looking quickly on back to Milton's point that 55% of white women voted for Trump over Biden, and 98% of Black women voted for President Biden.
Thank you, Black women in America. Now, in closing, next week we'll continue our discussion on these important issues. I'd like to thank you all for listening on all our different outlets, our WTOC 4 station and our other 4 station with Biggs Radio and YouTube and Facebook. Thank you for participating. Next week we'll have some continuation on this topic, because I can guarantee you this topic was not die a slow death. It's too important of an issue. So thank you, and may God bless and keep you until we talk next week. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a wonderful